What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Football Guys Dynasty Football Show. We're going to be breaking out week 2 action of the fantasy season. What does that look like? Pivots, dynasty pivots, going over prospect previews, trades, all of the above. But first, we have to talk about Justin Fields. So we did an episode talking about what if we were wrong. Not me on this topic, so don't yell at me. But if Justin Fields doesn't pan out to what we thought, what was that going to look like? And I don't know if we're there yet. It's been 2 games, but there's been some concerns. Like with his first 2 games, last game against Tampa Bay, quarterback rating of 61.1. He had those 2 interceptions, has not looked good, and he's had 2 finishes now outside the top 15 or 15 or worse in fantasy, which is not something that we saw last year. He's not getting design runs, so we have not seen the design runs that we have to see where his usage is. There is some offensive coordinator issues there. But panic meter, where are you at, Jeff? 0 meaning I'm chilling. 10 means it's on fire. I'm worried. I'm trying to jump ship.
I'm probably about a 6 or 7. I'm about as committed as anybody could be on Justin Fields, and I still firmly believe in the talent of the package, and I believe in the person. I believe that there's something there. I don't believe in the situation that he's in whatsoever. I think you look at, he's got 2 backup interior offensive linemen starting right now. He's getting pressure right up the middle. There's no design runs from the quarterback in that offense. There's no RPO action. There's no easy throws for him. You've got wide receivers that are running the same route coming into the same area. It just looks like, I don't know.
You've got Chase Claypool. Just say Chase Claypool.
Chase Claypool is doing whatever Chase Claypool feels like doing, and tried this week, and he caught a touchdown. He had a great throw from Justin Fields that hit him in the end zone. But you just see things on the field over this past year that Justin Fields can do that very, very few players in the NFL can do. And I think that when you have players with that package, yes, there are different accommodations that might need to be made, but you look at across the league at some different quarterbacks that are excelling or even playing passable football, to not be able to get him up to that level, I think lands on the coaches and the infrastructure, bottom line, full stop. And so if the Bears just don't have the commitment to play into his strengths, then move on from him and don't ruin this guy. Or if you don't understand what you're not doing, then get help. Like, talk to somebody. But I think that I'm sitting at a 6 or a 7, and that is coming from somebody that it was as committed as could be to Justin Fields.
Yeah, I'm with you. Shout out Jordan McNamara, because we had a discussion about Josh Dobbs and Justin Fields, and he tweeted out something about Josh Dobbs is an upgrade from Justin Fields, and quite frankly, last week he looked like it. Josh Dobbs looked awesome last week, but it's worth it to examine why that is. Josh Dobbs playing with confidence, playing in a functional offense, everyone's doing what they're supposed to do. A lot of those things aren't on Justin Fields, but I do want to preface this with Justin Fields has been bad. Like, he has played very, very poorly. He is missing guys all over the field. He's holding the ball. He looks like a guy that's afraid to get hit, which is understandable when you look at how many, early pressures he's had to face. Not just this year, just over the last 3 years. But I think the craziest part of the Justin Fields experience is that he looked his best throwing the football under Matt Nagy as a rookie. And there's something to be said about his regression as a thrower. I think that there is something substantial there as well, to the point that, along with Jeff, I am very in on Justin Fields. He was my QE1 in that class. I am very concerned with what we're seeing. The footwork is not there. He's not, throwing the football the correct way. Like, he's throwing ducks. That's not the Justin Fields that we saw as a prospect. He has gotten worse every year in the NFL. And I don't know if it's a confidence thing. I don't know if it's because they've altered his mechanics so much, that's a hot topic in Bears media right now, is they changed which foot he starts with. And so he's starting with his left foot forward. They wanted to do that because of the timing of the routes, but he's not getting to the back of his drops quick enough. The timing's all off on all the plays. Like Jeff said, there's spacing issues with the receivers. There's route issues with the wide receivers. There's certainly offensive line issues, to the point I watched the All 22 3 separate times this week. That's how invested
You're just going through it. You're just going through it, Chris.
Yeah,
that's what's going on there.
It's my coping mechanism. Yeah, I like to cope like that. No, I watched it myself. I watched JT O'Sullivan on the QB school, and then I watched Nick Whalen, a fellow Football Guys guy. He put like a 90-minute video out on Justin Fields, And the offensive line played a lot worse than I've anticipated in each of those. And Justin Fields certainly has things to clean up. But I don't think, if you go on social media, the panic meter is at a 10. We've got people asking us, would you send a first for Justin Fields? Yeah, because Sam Darnold is the one that I always go back to. Sam Darnold got a second chance with the Panthers. Sam Darnold is not remotely as close to as talented as Justin Fields. And we've seen Justin Fields be a dominant football player, not just, he has been a dominant quarterback. There's certainly some things that he needs to work on, but he has led a top 12 offense for a span of time in the NFL. And that player is still there somewhere. It might not be with Chicago, but I think Justin Fields still has a place in the NFL, even past this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think just a caveat to that: for every Sam Darnold, there's another Josh Rosen out there. I'm not saying that not saying that Justin Fields, easy there, Jeffrey. Okay, but not saying that they are. He is Josh Rosen. I'm just saying, like, we might think and expect there's an opportunity, but if he continues to play this poorly, and with this incoming 2024 quarterback class, and with the way the rookies are going, maybe they move him around. Baker Mayfield's look better. Like, I know we'll probably talk about Baker, but when we're talking about that, like, there are he's got to play better. I think that's the case that needs to be made, in terms of what Justin Fields does. And his offensive coach, the offensive system has not helped him. And I think the design runs is a huge part of this. Like, they got to get him going in that aspect of the game. But I think there's blame on both sides. I'm agnostic to this take because I've never been huge on Justin Fields and I never was down on Justin Fields. I just thought that he needed to play. We needed to see it. And he's not doing that right now. And I think if you're having the Dynasty, you should be worried. It's not where you're like, oh, all sunflowers and you're good. This is a concern. Jeff, go ahead and give me your take that you want to yell about, and then we'll dive into what his value is right now.
First off, Baker Mayfield is on his fourth opportunity, and he's looking very good on his fourth opportunity. So there's that. Justin Fields doesn't have any of the attitude or any of the off the field that Josh Rosen came in with. And I think he is a realistic guy. He loves football. He's a homebody. And I think that if he's put into a backup quarterback situation, I think he's the type of guy that he's going to be pretty realistic about that. And if he's on the field, for fantasy purposes, he has a quarterback one top 12 finish in his range of outcomes every single time he steps on the field. And I think that that's the biggest thing, that as long as he's getting those shots to be on the field, it's still there. He's not going to be this top 5 quarterback unless things change dramatically, but he still has top 12 finishes every single time he steps on the field in the range of outcomes.
But that's a problem though, because people are drafting him as a top 5 guy ish, getting in that 6 or 7 range.
No.
But they were. So I'm saying, if you have him on there, built a team.
He also made stupid mistakes with Trey Lance, and so.
Well, sure, but if you drafted Justin Fields though as a QB1, number 7 or 8, we talked about with his Dak Prescott, right? The Dak Prescott idea, you drafted Dak as a QB1, but really he's probably in that QB2 range, and that's definitely going to limit your upside on your dynasty team, and with the overall.
So the actionable, content or advice that I would give here. Yeah, I drafted Justin Fields. I am going through all of this with you all on all of my dynasty rosters. Pick up Tyson Bagent. That has been my hedge. I'm not saying Tyson Bagent is the answer, but I'm saying that there is a path at this point in this season where we might see Tyson Bagent. And you don't know what he is. It's worth it to stash him. He's available in a lot of leagues. I've picked him up in a lot of my leagues just to hedge my bet on Justin Fields. I don't necessarily think that they're going to bench Justin Fields. I think they'll fire Luke Getsy before they do that. But I also think that, both of those things could happen before the end of the season, and there might be a starting quarterback out on the market currently. Just go get ahead of it.
All right. Yeah. And right now, just for context, and I'm going to have these guys talk about it for a second. So these are some recent deals that happened yesterday and today in Superflex leagues. Straight up. So Justin Fields got traded straight up for Dak Prescott. You like that, Jeff? Yes, no?
Depends on position your team is in. If you use Fields as a first-round pick, I don't think it's worth it because you're lowering your ceiling moving forward. You're kind of tanking for Caleb, I think, if you're at that level. But if you're a contender and you're looking at this as, hey, this is my weak link, I need to shore this up, I don't hate it.
Okay. All right. Bryce Young for Justin Fields. Where are you at, Christian?
Bryce looks bad too. I don't know.
He does.
I know he's only 2 games in. I'd still just hold on to Justin Fields and hope, because we've seen it with him.
Yeah. All right. Other deals, real quick. We won't dive into them, but just give you guys context. All the actionable takeaways here. Justin Fields got traded for Kenny Pickett and a 24 first. He got traded straight up for Brock Purdy. And then he got traded for Daniel Jones and Mike Williams. And these all happened in the last 2 days. So just to show you the value's all over the place. And when you're looking at that, I'd be much comfortable, even though, Christian's a noted Bryce hater. So I'd be much more comfortable with like Bryce and Dak than the other guys, because I have a lot of question marks about Kenny Pickett, Brock Purdy, and Daniel Jones. But again, that's where they're. But if you have him on a roster, you're nervous. I think that you want to see him improve, and I don't think they're going to go away from him. But I do think that he's got to improve on both sides. Both do there. But before we move on, take a moment to like this video if you're watching here on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode. Comment below with any questions, or talk about Justin Fields. What do you think is going to happen there? Any trades that you have, or any thoughts on any topic we cover?
Also, make sure to head to footballguys.com/plans to become a premium subscriber. Elite subscribers get custom Dynasty content for less than $15 monthly or $70 annually. We have the best Dynasty content in the fantasy football industry. Join today.
All right, let's talk about injuries, because this is where we're at. Nick Chubb went down in a gruesome injury, so we're all praying for Nick Chubb off the Monday night game. What are we doing here with Nick Chubb? If he's your running back one, I had a lot of questions over the offseason. Like, I like him. I think he's going to get the usage. And we did see him kind of starting off pretty well. And I think he was going to be a big part of his offense, like always. So if he's your running back one, I think there's different ways you can pivot here. I think that the running back position is completely volatile right now, especially in Dynasty. And so I don't think you're out of it. If you lost Chubb, you're not out of it, but you definitely got to make some moves around there. What are you doing, Jeff, if Chubb was your running back one?
If he's my running back one, it probably depends. I don't know.
You're 2-0, and Chubb is your running back one.
I mean, I probably am looking for guys like maybe a James Conner. If I can make a cheap deal for a James Conner, that can give me some level of production to fill in. But it really kind of depends where I'm at. If I might be 2-0 and still this forces me to make difficult decisions in one direction, I'm still kind of holding on to Chubb. I feel more encouraged about Chubb than I do about J.K. Dobbins, just because the history of the Achilles injury. And I think unless the Browns go out there and make a move for like Jonathan Taylor, I think that they can still look at it as, hey, we still expect Nick Chubb to be ready to go week 1 next year. And so that's kind of where my mindset is versus J.K. Dobbins. I do expect that the Ravens will make a major contingency move off of him. So I view these situations differently.
I do too. Nick Chubb is my RB1 in a few leagues, and it's just I'm just going to patchwork it up. This might not be an opportunity to go out and get a meaningful running back that helps my roster, but I might start looking at wide receivers that bolster my flex options to where I can plug, one of my bench running backs in and not lose too much. I might look to increase value in different ways, or even tight end. If Nick Chubb's my RB1, I might have Kyle Pitts as my tight end one, and so I'm looking to maybe upgrade that tight end position. But it's unfortunate. I don't think it's a career ender. It's also just very concerning that that's the same exact knee that this exact same thing happened to. 8 years ago now. There's
Adam Schefter tweeted that out, so you could go look for Adam Schefter. He let you know.
Yeah, he did. He certainly did. It's also crushing to the Browns' hopes, because I don't think they have a good quarterback, and I think Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt, if Kareem Hunt is there, but I think Jerome Ford is a guy that can plug into that offense and perform well enough. It's just they needed Chubb. That Chubb is a different level of running back, so I just think this kind of shattered the Browns' hopes. I have a lot of Browns fans as friends, and I felt it as soon as that injury happened. It was, this season's over. So
I want to say 2 things off of that. I think you make a great point there on patchworking it. One, we talk about Dobbins, Saquon Barkley's going to miss time. Austin Eckler missed this past week. Everybody in your league is dealing with injuries. And I think that it can be easy to have that mindset of just worried about your team. And I've lost Nick Chubb. What do I do? Without seeing the landscape of, okay, well, you lost Nick Chubb. He lost Saquon Barkley. He lost J.K. Dobbins. And you're all kind of dealing with the same types of things. And the other thing too is, do not trade your first round pick. I think, unless you're like sure, but keep that first round pick because, yeah, you might be 2-0 right now, but you don't know where things are going to head. And I don't really love acquiring veteran players in Dynasty until we really get to week 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I have that spot locked down and I'm feeling like, okay, I've got one or two spots that I really got to do something here with, and then I'll be a little bit more aggressive on adding guys. But like I did do a deal this past weekend. I got Devontae Adams in a league where I thought I was be a little bit of a rebuilder, but then I had like Zay Flowers hit and like some other things hit where I'm like, okay, my team's a lot more competitive than I expected, and so I flipped off Tyler Algier and Rashid Shaheed and Kate Otten, and I got Devontae Adams. And so those are the types of deals where like I'm not giving up my first to bring him in, or even any picks to bring him in, but I'm giving up young guys to somebody that's looking at a rebuild and giving them multiple young pieces, and I'm plugging in what should be for the next 2 or 3 years still an elite level performer.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of takes on this. I think it's an interesting discussion. So let's just get into it anyway. So running back injuries, what we've seen from this year, how do you build dynasty rosters for this? So I think this is always the case. I think people are getting smarter how to build teams. I'm interested to hear Christian say, because we know Christian loves his running backs. Me and Jeff's takes is like, just don't draft running backs. We tend to not do that. Jeff doesn't draft them at all. I'm more of an anchor running back type of guy. So the way I kind of looked at this question and discussing too with Chubb. So Chubb is one of my anchor running backs. So I drafted Chubb, and then I didn't draft another running back till like round 8 or 9 or 10. So on that team that I have Chubb, I have Mostert as well. That's okay right now because he can kind of step in until he gets injured, which inevitably, knock on wood, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But he can kind of step in there. So the way my team is built is like I have at least a couple options I can kind of put in there as my running back one. I might take a hit on my running back two, but my wide receivers, as long as they stay healthy, I'm going to be in contention in that league. And obviously, there's attrition at some point. If you lose too many running backs, you're just going to miss on it. But that's how I tend to, when I'm thinking of how to build a dynasty rosters, that's how I kind of go for. I like the anchor running back strategy. It works for me. In the leagues that I definitely, if I drafted a running back heavy, I'm hurting right now. And you can tell by that. And you can see a lot of teams tell by that. I will say, though, as teams build differently, so like as dynasty managers start building not through the running back position, it's hard because I know we did some startups and Christian talked about it. The running backs are just sitting there and you're sitting in the 4th, 5th, 6th round. There's such good value to build there, but that has to be a win now roster. I feel like if you go after it, you got to go get those guys, and it takes a little bit of luck there. But I'm still on the anchor running back chain, and then you still kind of have that elite guy, but you can plug and play there. Jeff, I know you're 0 running back. You hate running backs. Is that kind of where you're standing still?
Yeah, but you make a good point, and I do think that's something that I've noticed shift just really, especially this past year when in startups. And I think some of it was the underdog mentality of going 0 RB, but I don't know if the rooms have just gotten sharper, or they're just kind of where my mind has always been. I've noticed this past year in startups, those wide receivers, especially those young wide receivers, last couple of years, 2020, 2021, you were able to get guys like Devonta Smith for like a 7th round pick or 8th round pick in your leagues because people were still taking the running backs. This past year in startups, it was gone. Those guys were gone. And so you had to do it early and get them. And then you were already looking at like the Nico Collins of the world by the time you were in round 8 or 9. And those great values on wide receiver were gone. And so it's caused me to reshift a little bit because I did draft a little bit more running backs, but you're still able to get like James Cook this past year, who is an RB1, by the way. James Cook is currently an RB1 2 weeks into the season. So I think that is worth noting. But looking at how you build those rosters, but even in your rookie drafts, how to deal with these running back injuries is have a short, narrow amount of wide receivers on your roster that guys are, that these guys are starting. These guys have hit. Use your early rookie picks. I like to use early rookie picks on wide receivers. And then I just throw as many running backs as I possibly can onto benches because you see Jerome Ford shoots up in value, or Joshua Kelly had a tough matchup this week. Otherwise, he would have shot up in value. And you just see these things. And then you have some of these other, maybe you've got a Nico Collins on your roster and everybody's like, I'm ready to buy in. Well, that gives you an opportunity to grab the 2nd round pick and the next backup running back that's going to become a starter and give you similar production of Nico Collins when that opportunity comes along.
Yeah, it's interesting because as someone who, I wouldn't say I go running back heavy, and I kind of have transitioned a little bit over the last couple of years, but I will say, a lot of my rosters have Nick Chubb and they have Aaron Jones because those two were the two like best values in startups in my opinion this year. Both have already faced injuries, and obviously the Chubb one is a killer, but it's funny because Jeff's mindset of, okay, fill the roster with mostly running backs and just have your anchored wide receivers that kind of fill your lineup. That I do the same thing when I go a couple of early running backs. I try
Mhm.
to, hedge the bet a little bit. So it is an interesting discussion. It's difficult to build around running backs, and that's not something that I've been doing. I know I still say, we hate running backs here, and I still like them, but there is a point to that, and you build through your quarterbacks, your wide receivers, and you just kind of load up on running back. The ends of my benches are just flushed with RB3s even that could potentially rise in value because we're kind of seeing that now. Or Kareem Hunt, I think he's on most dynasty rosters, but there might be a few leagues out there where people dropped him because they thought he was done. So just fill the back end of the roster with running backs and hope that there's a shoot up in value.
But you have to draft in tiers. You need to see where the tiers go because, like Jeff was talking about, yeah, the wide receiver Devonta Smith's going in the 5th or 6th round now, and you don't want to reach on Jerry Jeudy in the 6th. Like you didn't know, you don't want to do those things that people dynasty managers were doing. So you have to understand, like at a certain point, the threshold of like I'm going to grab this wide receiver because I'm doing a 0 running back build. It just isn't there anymore, and you have to grab some of those guys, and you have to pivot. So I think we hear a lot, and I think that dynasty managers hear a lot of like the right way. There is no right way to build a dynasty roster, like a perfect way, but understanding how to pivot and knowing kind of, I think you have to have multiple builds in your repertoire. Like I think in your profile, as some of those guys call it, the profile is you have to have some 0 running back builds. You have to have some anchor running back builds. You want to go heavy running back. I think that's okay if you diversify a little bit. I don't think it's any perfect time, but I do think that there's a way to build a roster after the draft. Like you have to understand market evaluations, values. That's what we try to do here, but fill your gaps, fill your needs there. Like the draft is only the beginning. Like as you move through dynasty, I think that's where managers kind of mess up a little bit as, oh, I have a 0 running back build. This is where I'm at. But if you have an elite wide receiver and you need to go get an elite running back, it's okay to do those deals sometimes. Like it's okay to move off the strategy. I think the strategy has to evolve and change. And especially with your league, not enough people go after the league mates. Not enough people understand how league mates build. Like I know how Jeff builds. So I know how I have to compete with a team like that, or Christian, or these other guys who are in. You need to understand your league mates in your league and understand the dichotomy of that league member and how to kind of build your roster out. Like those are little dynamics that you can't get on a macro scale, but on a micro scale, you can kind of do that.
Yeah. Also,
Got it, Jeff.
Good job, Kevin.
All right, let's move on. Usually Jeff, he likes to rib me a little bit. He told me after the show the other day I don't understand player value, so that hurt my feelings. All right, so let's get into I'll never forget it either. Let's get into Puka Nacua. So let's talk about what we have there with Nacua. At the, he's a borderline. I mean, I don't know what to say about Puka. I mean, we talked about him. I mean, we put on here the God. He's definitely performed. When you saw the last two weeks, he's been really good. The 35 targets in 2 games is absolutely bonkers. Like that. I mean, when you're looking at the target share, everything that's there, 25 receptions, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. So the question goes down, like, is he a 1? Like, are we talking about this guy? Like his value shot up. He was what, 4th round pick, maybe late 3rd, depending on the league that you're in. Now he's going for 2024 first. Later in the show, we're going to talk about some trades that he went down there. We've seen him traded straight up for Jameson Williams. We've seen all these different trades for him. Are we comfortable like saying, hey, he's going to come in, Cooper Kupp comes back? How much does he dip into this? Where are we at with Puka, Jeff?
I am not moving on Puka. If I can move Puka off my roster and get a 1st round pick and maybe even something else, then I'll do that deal. And I'll be wrong. And I had the joke last week on, hey, offer Puka Nacua for Drake London because maybe somebody will take it, and people were taking it left and right. And so those types of things. Yeah, I mean, I'll happily be wrong on that, and I'll say, Puka, you got me. Good job there. Otherwise, I'm not buying because I need to see what this offense looks like with Cooper Kupp in it. I need to see what his role looks like with Cooper Kupp in it because, one, the efficiency and the volume of offense for the Rams has been through the board. It's there. I looked at it after the completion of week 2, when I was looking at my article, and they've run 77 plays average for the first 2 weeks. Over the last 10 years, the most any offense has run is 70, and that's like historic offenses. That's like those Broncos where Peyton Manning had 55 touchdown passes. They were running 70 plays a game. Or if you flash back to 2019, that Ravens team with Lamar Jackson when he was smashing fantasy records, they were running 70 plays a game. The Rams are at 77 plays a game. And so we are playing a volume-based game. And so if volume, the more you do something, the more volume is going to be available. And so I need to see, is this offense sustainable? Because if it is, then this is one of the greatest fantasy offenses ever known to man, and Puka Nacua will deliver on that. If that efficiency pulls back a little bit, and they've got Kyron Williams is the only running back they feel comfortable on their roster right now, so there's some major questions. That attrition could really affect this offense quite a bit. So if this offense moves back a little bit and Cooper Kupp gets inserted into it, what do you got? I mean, Puka, we saw this with Travis Fulgham 3 or 4 years ago, where he had an insane 4-week run, and then it was just gone. And this happens. Leagues adjust to guys get hurt, or guys' roles change. It happens.
I think Puka's talented. I have major dynasty concerns about the Rams. Stafford is playing the best ball that I've seen him play, maybe ever. Maybe that playoff run when they won the Super Bowl, I could argue that's the only Stafford version that's better than this. What they are doing is a very much so a dink and dunk type of offense that takes advantage of the 2 high safeties. We talked about this a little bit pre-show, but you know who thrives in that offense? Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp does. Cooper Kupp is going to get volume when he comes back. You know who will take advantage of the deep shots? Now, I'm not saying that Puka can't, transition his role from what they're having him do now to something else. But I do think that we do need to see it with Cooper Kupp. And then we need to see if this offense is legit. And then we need to see if Matthew Stafford is playing football next year. And, I know everyone likes to take it 1 year at a time. And I understand that. And, and from redraft perspectives, Puka Nacua is awesome. I think that you can go in on him. I think you would take the risk and do that. From a dynasty perspective, I think there are serious questions about this sustaining for multiple years. And I'm saying that as someone who, we really liked Puka on this show.
Yeah.
But I think that the hype is getting a little crazy. We'll talk about that in the trade. So I'll leave that for later.
I still think, I think Tutu Atwell is the cheaper. I'll take a shot on Tutu in Dynasty at this point, because I do think when you're looking at what Tutu's done, 17 targets the last 2 games. And again, like Jeff said, the efficiency numbers on the Rams offense is incredible. But if Cooper does come back, I think, Van Jefferson's out. I think from just the perspective of this, Van's out. Tutu's going to still be on that field there. And I do think that there's some, when you're looking at Kupp and Nacua, I think there's a reason why we've seen Nacua's targets, usage, all that stuff. They kind of mirror each other a little bit. I think they play similarly. They have that. Tutu's kind of the outlier where I don't think he necessarily plays as similar as those guys, and because of his size and where he's at. And we know that the NFL is trending this way. I think he's cheaper. I know he's small, but I think that he's definitely put on some weight though. So he's got the shakes on at night. But he said I think Tutu's the cheaper version. If you're going to go out, I'd be more comfortable throwing some draft picks or whatever the case, not high draft picks like you're going to have to do with Nacua. More of like, okay, where are we going in terms of that? I like Tutu in that area.
Well, and I think so you think about the Rams offense, they run 11 personnel almost exclusively. And what they love to do is they love to do those 3 wide receiver bunch sets. And so you're going to have Puka as that point guy on the line on those. You're going to have Tutu and you're going to have Cooper Kupp behind him. And Puka is really going to be the guy that he's going to be the wedge buster more or less when it comes to the defense. And you're going to have Kupp, who is one of the very best in the league at understanding how to operate in space, understanding how to find areas, coming in beneath that Puka's physicality, cleaning that out. And then you've got that wheel that you're sending Tutu around vertically on that, stretching the defense vertically. And so you're just creating these 2 guys that are being so productive right now are going to be fantastic at creating space for Cooper Kupp when he's back, if he's back fully healthy.
Yeah, 100%. All right, let's do one last topic before we get off of YouTube here. All right, let's do Anthony Richardson. Let's talk about him. He got knocked out of the game for the concussion last week, but the question here, this has to be a Christian question. Is he a top 6 dynasty quarterback already? So if we look at Football Guys dynasty rankings right now at the quarterback position, Patrick Mahomes. So tier 1 for our, consensus, wherever that tier is at, is Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, and Justin Herbert. Does anybody have them in that tier for fantasy?
Not
No.
yet.
Okay. So then tier 2, we have Lawrence, Lamar, Anthony Richardson, and Justin Fields, which Justin Fields looks like he's trending down, as we kind of talked about. But would we have Anthony above Lamar and Trevor Lawrence? Are you ready to put him there, Jeff?
No, I mean, I've seen enough from Lawrence to believe that it's going to hit, and I'd like to see Anthony Richardson play an entire football game for once before I really kind of declare him as going to be that guy. I think that I'm encouraged. I think everybody should be encouraged about Lamar Jackson. We haven't seen like the dominant fantasy numbers, but we've seen progression, major progression as a quarterback in 2 games with Lamar Jackson. And so that is that being able to take that step from the guy that needs to run around all day long to this dude's a legit NFL quarterback, understands coverage, moving, manipulating guys, and doing all those things. He's doing that in those first 2 games now in a more complex scheme. And so that's where I feel a little bit more comfortable with what we've gotten in the past from Lamar Jackson, but also thinking that, this isn't going to be done in 2 or 3 years. And so I still have him above Richardson, but I hear the argument and I think it's valid. But again, I'd like to see him play an entire NFL football game instead of 2/3 of one.
Yeah. So I haven't updated my dynasty rankings as of this moment. I think when I do, I'd be comfortable putting Anthony Richardson at 6. The reason I would be comfortable doing that, there are still some weaknesses on his film, but the growth, even from last year to the NFL, where it is much harder as a passer, is substantial. The offense that they have created around him is phenomenal. It's like watching the Philadelphia Eagles from last year. And I just don't see a world in which that fails with that level of talent. And when you combine all of that with everything we've talked about with Anthony Richardson and that rushing upside, he had 2 rushing touchdowns in his second NFL game. He has 3 on the season. Didn't he have one week 1 too?
Yes.
The way he's just throwing the ball all over the place with this like unheard of zip. We knew he had it, but like you watch Josh Allen play and then you watch Anthony Richardson play and you say, they throw about the same miles per hour. And that is a good thing, especially with Anthony Richardson's skill set. I know it's early. I understand, this is me saying I'd be comfortable putting Anthony Richardson above Justin Fields, which I did not anticipate saying this early in the season. But 2 weeks in, the film is not telling any lies, I don't think. I think Anthony Richardson is legit. And I think that when we get a full season of it, I wouldn't be shocked if we're talking about him as a top 5, top 6 pick next year, especially if some of these other things start to trend downward again. So.
And he was already trending that way in the offseason. He started getting into that first round, like late first in terms of where his value was. This offense is perfect. I mean, his head coach is going to build something like he did for Jalen Hurts. And had Justin Fields had this head coach, Steichen, we'd be talking probably about the same thing. I know we had talked about that on there. I do like Jeff's point, which makes me just disgusting. But when you're talking about Lamar, so if we throw out some Lamar takes, and I know this was an Anthony Richardson question, but I got to throw in Lamar too. I wrote a spotlight talking about Lamar and everything there this year. So here's some numbers. This year, he's throwing a screen 20% of the time. So we're seeing a lot more screens, which, hey, look at that. He's using screens in Todd Monken's offense. It's crazy how that works. Last year was at 7%. And then the year before it was 4%. So we're seeing the efficiency numbers go up. He has a 74% completion rate right now. That's better than his career, which is 63%. So we're seeing that. But I think the improvement with Lamar is that last year he completed 29% of his deep passes and 66 in the intermediate. Now this year, and I know the sample size, it's 2 games, is 50% deep and 70% in the intermediate. So we're seeing his deep balls. And I think it's just because he's not having to throw as many. And it's not, I think game script wise, you're not looking as like, oh, we know Lamar's throwing deep here. He's in trouble. Because that's really what it was the last couple of years. Now that they have utilized all these screens and not put him in those positions, his efficiency is just going up because they're using him in the right ways. And I think that's the fun part about Lamar. Lamar's becoming a better quarterback, which is scared of everybody. Sorry, Joe, about everybody there. Like, because I think he's becoming more efficient passer. And I just think overall the Ravens are, not barring injuries, like they're a very good football team. And I think Lamar's going to get better as a fantasy asset because I think we were always worried about his legs going out. We're done with him. That might not matter anymore. Lamar might actually become a better passer, and that should scare people.
Yep.
Look at that. I made him speechless. So I think that's it. We appreciate you guys. Christian, take us out.
Yeah, the full version of every show can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're enjoying the show, head over to your favorite podcast app and subscribe to the Football Guys Dynasty Football Show.